Live? Yeah, we're live.
Yep, recording and transcript.
Yay!
Hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm here with Ryan. And Ryan is, of course, one of the competitive players from the States. And Ryan, you were running American successfully all through version 2. And now we've transited into version 3. Have you had time to look at the new American lists?
Yes, and I've written them kind of compulsively over the last week since I've gotten my book.
I know, because you sent quite a lot of them to me.
Sorry about that.
No, it's that's why we get these conversations, isn't it? Because I mean, we just go back and forth over is this a good thing or is like, and we're theory crafting all the time. So this is basically us theory crafting live on your YouTube instead of just typing it all out to each other. That's basically what we're going to do. So let's just start with the units that Americans have now. And no, maybe we should start with the special rules. What do you think about the changes to the special rules here?
Um, Obviously, I think every American player is a little sad to lose the fire and maneuver or the moving without penalty.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, I think with the new hit modifiers, as much as it saddens me to see that go, I think probably it would be significantly overpowered in version 3. So
Yeah.
I can see how that was cut.
Yeah.
Uh,
So you don't think that the new one extra rifle shot per 3 shots is worth losing the old fire maneuver for?
well, I'll ask you this question as a competitive British player who had a whole menu of special rules to choose
Mm.
from, and having fire and maneuver as it is in version 3 as one of your options. How often did you pick that as your special rule?
I've picked it exactly 0 times. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah.
Um, and I think the part that kind of hurts on that too is the BAR being such a unique and prevalent weapon in the U.S. Army
Yeah.
list. This competes against taking the BAR. It competes against taking SMGs. I was already reluctant to take SMGs in version 2 because they didn't benefit from that long range shooting and moving.
Yeah.
So
SMGs though are much
better
more
now.
interesting version 3, aren't they?
Yes. A tough fighter being better,
Yeah.
the point blank shooting being deadly.
Yeah.
So now the trade off is now is like with this rule not being as important, I'm seeing SMGs and stuff starting to pop up in my lists more. Although I'm seeing BARs disappear from the list,
Yes.
which is interesting. As much of a fan of them as I was, I don't know that the extra range is worth the one. They're more expensive, and now they're directly competing against this, and they don't. My understanding is they don't have the benefit of uh, the move and shoot without penalty anymore as well.
Yes,
So
that's my understanding as well. So they don't get that, and they don't get the extra for being a rifle. So you're not getting the extra shots for that either. So the
right,
BAR, and it's gotten a little bit more expensive as well.
it went from 5 to 6.
Yeah.
So
So um, with the new rules, what I've found, having played about 12, 13 games now, is that that range shooting is a lot more deadly, and you hit from turn 1 basically. So you don't think that will compensate a little bit for the extra points and for them not getting the rifle bonus?
I don't know yet. The my problem is I don't have any games under my belt yet in
Yeah,
V3.
yeah,
I know you and I talked about getting a TTS game in at some
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Looking at it, and this is one of those things that I think everybody that's played a tabletop war game long enough knows is like there's things that look right on paper, and then you play and they don't turn out the way that you think they will.
Exactly.
Um, on paper, I don't really see the benefit of the BAR, but once I get on the table and playing that extra, that 30-inch range where you might be able to throw a pin out
Mm,
early
yeah,
might make more of a difference.
yeah.
So we'll see.
And we will also see if perhaps some American players will start to use LMGs instead as well, because that has not been a thing for Americans at all.
Mm-mm. No.
But 36-inch range and the extra shots that you're getting now as well. Sorry, not the extra shots. The chance to pin very, very securely. I mean, that makes a difference for me.
Yep. The other thing on the firing maneuver now is it also kind of, I'm trying not to let it change the squad sizes that I take.
Yeah.
Because you want to like, oh, I'll just throw that extra man in or 2 guys in to get that extra shot, but then you're paying an extra 20 points or whatever it might, 26 points if they're veterans, whatever it might be. And it may or may not be worth it. So just
So that's something to look for when you're testing out your Americans. Is it worth it to go to 6, 9-man size for your units or not?
Because I immediately started looking at, well, with my past in playing in version 2, 9-man veteran tough fighters was kind of my first gravitation on infantry.
Yeah.
We'll see.
What about gyro stabilizers in version 3? Now you're not suffering the -1 to hit if you're veteran. Do you think that's worth it?
I think this is all the same as it was in V2. This is a direct carryover. Again, I don't know. I think the only time I've ever seen somebody take a veteran tank in my entire bolt action career was another American player who had a veteran Sherman. Otherwise, I don't know that I've ever seen anybody take them, and I never did either. I think with there being fewer hit penalties to begin with, this becomes maybe less important. Even, and I wasn't taking it to begin with. I think will be a neat change on gyro stabilizer. So if anybody's listening to this when they're getting ready to write the Armies of book, I would much rather see this be an equipment upgrade option, as opposed to tied to veterancy. Because I also don't know that it makes sense. Like, you have brand new green crews that are assigned to new equipment all the time. So it wasn't just veterans that were getting, like veteran crews that were getting gyro stabilized equipment.
No, so they all got them.
Yeah. I think narratively it would make more sense that, whether it's a 30-point upgrade or whatever point upgrade, I would be very interested in taking it as an equipment upgrade to a regular tank as opposed to paying the full cost of getting a veteran tank.
My thought process was that that not getting that -1 to hit would mean that all the time you would be hitting on 4s instead of 5s, and that's not nothing. And at the same time, being veteran, your tank would not take pins from like stuff that couldn't hurt it, HMGs or what have you. So my thought process,
Hellcats are always going to be taking pins from whatever hits them.
That's true. That's true. Anyways, what about the new air observer, double tabbing air observer that's now 75 points, and where the airplane is not very likely to hit your own troops anymore? Is that worth it?
And at 75 points, I think it's a significant upgrade to the air observer. It is something I would consider if I was working a list where I was running multiple rifle platoons. Trying to stack a couple of them in. I think that's where they would. I think the more of them you would take, and the more airstrikes you try to get out in a turn, they have kind of a compounding.
They do
interest to me.
Yeah, because you pin something else and you kill that one unit, and then so you're like taking a lot away from the enemy at the same time.
Yep, I think narratively, I think they're a very neat unit.
You can also do some really nice modeling with the planes.
Yeah. My concern on them is I still think there's enough randomness in the chart, and on a 4, only getting a 50-50 on something coming in to begin with is still a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, it is.
I'll be interested to see British players such as yourself, now that they're not free, how often you bring the artillery observer. Have they been working into your lists?
For me, I'm not working that much on British lists right now, so I'm I haven't settled on that, but I am thinking about them, and that's mainly because if I want to have an assault list working at any point, I'm going to need something to make the assault possible. And in the old version, it was the aero server, sorry, the artillery server that did that, right?
Yes, very effectively.
Yeah,
Um,
but will
I
it work
think
now?
where
I'm on the fence. Yeah.
they're also much more interesting to me if you're running a heavy weapons platoon with a lot of regular mortars
Mm.
of whatever size mortar you take. With these guys being able to spot for them as well now, I think that's going to be a very interesting
Yep.
synergy.
Yep.
It'd be a lot
Right.
more interesting.
Ryan,
and then modern communications, real fast.
Yep.
Love that rule. I think that's probably the best one the Americans have at the moment.
Yeah.
It was very effective for me in version 2. I think it'll be very effective in version 3. I'm not sure. I haven't figured out what my outflanking options would be with the trucks being. We'll get to trucks later, but still not taking that -1 to come in. Saved my bacon more than once. So I love that rule.
For me, it just. I think there was a little bit of an inflation with all the minor nations coming out, and a lot of them having either you can't outflank or I'm outflanking, ignoring the -1, right? So for me, it just it doesn't feel that special anymore, if that makes sense.
No, it may not feel special, but it still feels good.
True. Right. Let's talk about the units then. There's no special units for the HQ for Americans. Like we have the usual, the officer, the medic, the forward observer. So that's pretty basic, right? Is there any like must takes for you in that HQ section?
I still don't see a reason. I'm still not seeing a reason much more than to take the single inexperienced officer. I know they're vulnerable, but everything's vulnerable. Just like small units are just much more. You're just gonna have to hide them and keep them out of sight, keep their head down. I still think 21 points is pretty cheap tax on officers. So I think across the board, we're still going to see the inexperienced officers. I would like to see in the Armies of book, this is wish listing. The Americans had in, I think one of the theater selectors, it was a paratrooper company HQ that could take and actually like a full size squad, and they could all take SMGs.
Yeah, that was neat.
And not having a dedicated SMG squad in the US list, that would be something that would fill a pretty interesting niche.
Yeah, it would.
That's just me.
Right.
Other than that, no, nothing else really to comment on the. Oh, well, I will say medics. This is more on theory crafting. I did run medics a little bit in version 2. I think now with infantry being, I think what was the number I saw? 16% more survivable if they're in cover against shooting in this edition in general. I don't know if that's. I feel like I saw that somewhere. Medics also then having a 16% chance to stand somebody back up. I think they're probably more valuable now than ever, just for keeping your guys alive.
Right. Let's talk about the infantry choices then. The Americans have a fairly big selection of different infantry choices. So you can take the regular infantry, which you can take inexperienced, regular, or veteran, and you can give them BARs, or you can give them submachine guns, like 4 submachine guns in a unit, which is quite a lot actually. And they can take anti-tank grenades, which you don't want anyway, and they can take tough fighters, which at that you might just get the SMGs. Like tough fighters is 1 point, SMGs is 4 point, but SMGs are just so deadly at close quarters, right?
And that's kind of where you have to. That's kind of where you have to balance your strategy of, am I doing a skirmish unit or am I doing a close-in shooting unit? Because if you're trying to do the skirmishing, you're not going to want those SMGs. But if you're wanting to get in.
Yeah, exactly. And as we said before, with the BARs, you might want to go for them, or you might just want to break off all the arms with BARs on all your models at this point, and just give them
Can't do it.
Well, I'm considering doing that with all my, because I built, like 40-man partisans with pistols, and their pistols are now completely worthless. So I'm like, am I gonna break off all the arms now? Oh, well, I don't know. Anywho, then we have the engineers. Again, Americans can get regular and veteran engineers. They can take, again, the usual BAR, a couple of submachine guns, and a flamethrower. Now, the flamethrower's gotten expensive, 30 points.
Yes.
And they run out on a 1 and 2, and they take pins as well. What do you think about that?
It hurts. I think it's probably, I don't know, and I'm not sure that it's even necessary. I don't know if that was a necessary change. I don't know if I don't want to be negative. I almost feel that probably a game designer somewhere had a negative experience with them and felt like this was something that had to be tweaked. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. I don't feel like there was, in my experience in the competitive gaming circuit, I don't know that the people were really that upset with flamethrowers.
At least in my circles, some people were like the barbecue lists that had all flamethrowers and were so deadly because they could kill anything. They were a thing in Europe for a while, at least.
But I feel like the meta had already started to turn away from that.
Yeah, it definitely had. It was going away from the flamethrowers, and I think with this change, the flamethrower is still good. Like it's still deadly.
I wonder. And a lot of tournaments were starting to cap out the number of flamethrowers you could take in a list. So I'm wondering what this is going to do with tournament packets, whether because they are not as effective, like because of the pins and because of the ability to run out on a 1 and 2, if TOs are going to start releasing those caps. And if they do, maybe we'll see a bunch of them again, and we'll realize that even though they're more expensive and there's problems, people are going to start.
They're still very deadly, right? They're still very deadly because they hit now on a 2, all of them.
Right.
If you throw them up, no, actually I tell a lie. They'll hit on a 3, right? Because you're at point blank, which is +2, but you've moved, which is -1. So on a 3, but and that's almost a guaranteed kill on something, right? But it's just such a glass cannon.
For those playing along at home, if you're looking at the half tracks in here with a 10-man capacity, you can throw a 5-man engineer squad and two-man flamethrower teams and a company commander in that half track and snap to the half track, roll it up, drop all 3 flamethrowers out, and hit 3 things all at once with flamethrowers. I mean,
that is just deadly.
I mean, you can do that. You can do that at least twice there.
True. Then we have the airborne, which are very much like they used to be. They have stubborn as a 1-point upgrade. They can be glider infantry, take a little bit of different equipment for that. We have the rangers with the new pack of the Ranger Starter Army. That I think was a lot of people is going to be looking at that, and with the changes to the missions, I also think Rangers are going to be an interesting choice. Yeah.
When I pre-ordered my book here, I also, to get, you got to get the free shipping. It's the economical thing to do. It was this book and a box of Rangers. That's what I was anticipating. I might be fitting into some lists. I will note, just so people are aware, they did FAQ or errata the Ranger entry. Their points on here are incorrect.
Yeah.
They were essentially getting a free man in this book.
For some reason, So,
I
think
the
interesting thing about them is, of course, the move before the game starts, right?
Mm-hmm. And with that move, with cover again being so much more important, and them being veterans, getting up and in cover, and then even if they just go down for the entire rest of the game, they're serving a significant function.
but they'll also be able to move up and not only get into cover, they'll be able to move up and push out any infiltrators that's lurking in the mid tables or wherever you're putting them down, right?
Your air observers, your artillery observers,
exactly.
your spotters, your snipers.
Yeah. These units can be very vulnerable to rangers just pushing up and then shooting them at close range.
Yeah. I think you mentioned the LMG possibly making it into US lists. If you're going to take an LMG, I think this is the squad that it's going to go into.
Oh, yeah, because that's a lot of range. You have 12 inches, then you have 6 inches of movement, and then 36 inches of... That's a lot. That's the back line.
I mean, you could... turn one... I mean, even with that 12-inch run up, you're now, depending on what the deployment zones are, you're at midfield, almost midfield now. And you can be really pumping a lot of shots out. So even taking, where I would look at these is taking 2 minimum strength squads with LMGs, 2 separate min strength squad LMG, just for deleting those spotters and observers and snipers right there in the midfield.
That would be a first time, I think, that any American player has run LMGs. Interesting.
Yeah, and I think there's a good argument for a nice cheap veteran LMG squad right there.
Yeah, I think so too. Then we come to...
I'm gonna start changing my list here real quick.
Yeah, start typing. Then we come to what was the standard infantry for most American players all through at least the second half of V2, the Marine squad. That hasn't changed massively, right? You still have access to all the funny gear with the shotguns and the pistols and the submachine guns and the BARs. What has changed is how good all of that stuff is.
Yeah.
Are we going to see Marines anymore?
Well, I was one of those outliers that I never took them in my play style. I didn't think, and again, it came back to shooting in version 2. And I think this is going to be one of the biggest changes I ever wrapped my head around in change of play style is in version 2, shooting was putting pins on, but it couldn't be counted on for actually deleting units.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's where the flamethrowers came in. That's where the cavalry came in. That's where the Stuarts came in. And in my case, I took the veteran tough fighter infantry so that I could charge in and eliminate units.
Push them out of that objective. Yeah.
Yes. Shooting might be able to delete units now. We'll see if you can catch units in open or units that have already activated and can't go down. I still think there'll be an argument for the maxed out BAR Marine units. I think we're not going to see them as much.
Yeah, I think so too. Just because the BAR is less attractive.
It's more expensive.
That was the main selling point, because they could take 3, right? And they could still take 3.
But having the movement penalty now, that are more expensive now.
Yeah.
You also are losing the moving and shooting ability with the rifles. So those are taking the penalties on moving and shooting. Like, the whole squad is less effective, more expensive.
Yeah. Then we're moving into the territory of all the team weapons. So we get the medium machine gun. That was always a thing, that you could take extra medium machine guns for Americans, but nobody ever took medium machine guns. Right. Is there an argument right now for taking those?
Well, they're significantly better.
Yeah.
Full stop. Not being able to instant lose them to snipers is great. I have some beautiful ones that I would love to put on the table that I modeled and painted and have very scenic diorama type bases. So just for that, I think there is an argument for taking them.
Yeah.
I'm interested even at the inexperienced one. Like, it's a cheap order dice. They're in your back line, so they're probably not going to get. I mean, there's a chance that they're not going to get shot at. They only taking a -1 to hit on the inexperienced when you're having 5 shots is not that huge of a penalty.
No, you're still hitting on 5s. Yeah.
Yep. And you got 5 shots. You're likely going to hit something and put the pin on it.
You have 6 shots now, so
Yeah,
it's
right,
it's
6
even
shots.
better.
Yep.
In that you're very likely to hit. And because you're not a small team anymore, there's no such thing as
Right.
teams and team
Right.
weapons. The snipers are not going
Yep.
to one-shot you
Yep.
anymore. So for me, I think that, and with the extra selection, this is an opportunity for American players to really spam out on auto dice, and
I really
on
want to see
that
somebody.
have some effect. Yeah.
I really want to see somebody take, because you can take 3 per slot. And what is the heavy weapons team? Is there?
That's you can
total
take
of
5
6?
different, so that's you can take 15 in heavy weapons platoon, I think.
Yes. So I'm interested to see somebody take 15. Hold on, what's the 5? Hold on, I got
15 times.
So if you take the inexperienced ones, you can get 15 of them for about 525 points. So you still have 700 some points to play.
Wow, that is insane. Yeah,
I mean, you joke, but like if you put those somewhere in a tree line somewhere and just put them all in ambush, like.
What about the 50 cal? Because right now, heavy machine guns are now at 48-inch range and +1 to penetrate, which means that they can pin any vehicle, and they can kill all soft-skinned, and they can even potentially kill an armored car, right?
This is where I feel like they have the same like this is a problem that wasn't fixed in the carryover from V2 to V3.
Yeah.
And that is the reason I took, Dodge trucks in version 2 for the medium machine gun. It was a cheaper, more mobile, more survivable platform.
Yeah.
For the machine gun. And that was always always a problem for machine gun. Like, why would you pay more for a more vulnerable
you wouldn't.
thing?
Yeah.
If you look here, and again, they've kind of shifted the balance a little bit because you take the half penalty of shooting the HMG if mounted on a vehicle. But you can get an armored a regular heavy machine gun right now is 70 points. You can get an armored half track that can carry 10 guys with an HMG for 70 points.
So you have only 3 shots, though, not the 6, the full 6, but you're movable.
And you're armored, and you can drive through terrain, and you can carry a squad with you.
So that's what you're getting. For 70 points? Yeah, that's what I'm getting.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
And the Rubicon models look nice. The Warlord ones look nice. They're all like, who doesn't want to have a whole bunch of half tracks driving up the board?
Yeah. That's what I'm getting. That is definitely.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, and even when you compare that to, if you're taking regular medium machine guns for an extra 20 points, you can upgrade to an HMG on a half track.
Yeah.
It gets
pretty attractive. That is very interesting. Right. The bazooka. The bazooka is pretty much as we know it, except now it gained the ability to shoot houses, which is definitely now nice.
Yes, and it can also switch to the 2-inch. Is it the 2-inch template?
No, 1-inch, but
1 inch. But still, being able to 1-inch template. I mean, that's pretty nice.
Yep,
I like it.
Yeah, that is good. So the bazooka just got a little bit better.
Yeah.
And with the ability to take one in every single rifle platoon, or to take a heavy weapons platoon and then spam them out, that I think we're going to see more bazookas, which again might say that we're not going to see as many tanks. Because
and on the theory crafting side, on list writing, I know we've already talked about this, but a unit that I'm looking at is that half track I just mentioned, with a 5-man engineer squad with a flamethrower and 2 SMGs. A inexperienced lieutenant to snap 2, and then you got 2 extra seats in there throwing a bazooka in.
Yeah.
So now you kind of have a lot of your tools that are armor encased and can get up the field.
Yeah.
I like bazookas to begin with too, and conveniently, there was one that came with the book.
Nice. So that's always good. What about snipers? Because I know you used snipers before, right?
I did.
The changes to snipers, they are now more deadly, but they're, I guess, less useful. Is that right?
Yes, I think that's a great way to summarize it. And I mean, the Germans are going to get their first armies of book. I think the German national rules got a lot better for them. I think they've got a good. I think the Germans are going to be very competitive.
Yeah.
At least out of the gate in version 3.
Yeah.
And with their ability to replace NCOs on a 2-up, your sniper loses a lot of versatility against them as well. I'm kind of in a wait and see on snipers.
Me as well. I'm not immediately jumping on snipers. We already talked about flamethrowers. Mortars, though, we haven't talked about mortars. These are not special for Americans. Everyone gets mortars, except, of course, Americans get an extra dude on their mortars, right? Are you looking at mortars to supplement whatever else you're getting for your heavy platoons, right?
Yeah. I love heavy mortars. I try to put them in. I try to put every list I write starts with heavy mortars in it, and then by the time they get to the field, they're medium mortars.
Because they're so expensive.
They are. But yeah, I think medium mortars are still just a staple of the game, and I think the other thing I know how it's been pitched is that indirect HE is going to be the solution to infantry that are dug in.
A little bit, yeah.
And I've heard that from Marcus and some other people, like that's what you're going to want to see. My concern with taking it in the artillery slot is the minimum indirect ranges.
Yeah.
I think infantry getting up close and holding midfield objectives, you're going to have to be pushed. If you're taking the howitzers, you're going to have to push those out to the corners to be able to indirect fire into the middle of the board, which makes them vulnerable because they're not protected by or supported by the rest of your army. I think mortars with the much shorter indirect, the minimum range, I think that they're going to be, I think people are going to try the artillery and they're going to realize that people are getting in underneath their indirect range. And I think we're going to see more and more mortars.
And that, of course, will mean that you're going to have to shoot directly, and then the infantry that you're shooting at gets cover saves, which, so they survive, right? So, you are going to have to try and dig them out with mortars. I think that's absolutely.
And if you're shooting at them direct, they go down so they get half the number of hits on the template, and they get their armors, they get their cover saves. I don't know that howitzers are going to be the solution people think they will be.
But now we're talking about the artillery selection. We might as well just continue down with the units here, because Americans get the usual stuff. They get howitzers, they get autocannons, and then, very interestingly, they get the M51 multiple machine gun platform.
Yeah, they do.
How many have you bought already?
My shopping carts are still sorting themselves out.
Okay.
I think this is where I would go. I think if I was going to take HMGs, I wouldn't take them as the heavy weapons support platoon. I think I would take them here in the M51.
Yeah, because they've got four, right? And because it's not a vehicle, it means that you're shooting 24 shots with that one unit. That's the Ludacris Stewart.
Devastating.
That is devastating. At +1 penetration and 48-inch range, that will lock down a lane of fire hard. That really will.
You put one of those somewhere and throw it in ambush, there's no infantry are going to be coming through there.
Yep.
Full stop.
They're just dead.
Done.
Absolutely done. So, and this was one of the units that you never saw in version 2, right? Nobody ever took this. But, oh my God, did that get good.
And for only 135 regular.
Yeah. It's a no-brainer. It's really good.
Yep. And I'll point out the toes for that. You can get a fairly cheap one that you can also get an HMG on as well.
Yeah, that's the tractor, right? I can't remember
the tractor,
the name of that one.
The artillery tractor.
Yeah, exactly.
You can get one of those with an HMG for around, I don't remember, it's around 50 or less points, 50-ish points.
Yeah, that works. Let's move on to the vehicles, because like at least here, everyone running Americans were running the Recce Dhaka Early War Stewards for them as well. I know you never did. So let's talk about the different.
I did at one point. I
Okay.
ran. I did take one eventually. I caved to peer
You
pressure.
caved to the pressure.
And I didn't like it.
No. You were always more of a Hellcat kind of guy, weren't you?
Yep, I was.
Yeah. So what do you think about the new tank choices for Americans?
I have an editorial complaint.
Yeah.
On their tank entries, because they put in the weapons section, and this is, I think they should change this in the Armies of book.
Yeah.
In the weapons section, they put it in as the gyro stabilized turret.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that should go in the special rules section under, if selected as veteran, the unit gains gyro stabilized, because I especially for maybe a new player or somebody new to this that doesn't just know that non-veterans don't have it. The entry says you have it.
Yeah, that is confusing.
And you have to go back to the special rules section and have that in the forefront of your mind, and then come back to your unit selection and realize you don't have it.
Yeah. And
I know this is no judgment, but nobody ever wants to err on the side of penalizing themselves if they don't know there's not a lot of motivation to look up rules that penalize you.
No, that is true.
So that's just an editorial comment on all of the I think the in the Lee, like the Lee medium tank, you can't even take as veteran.
No, you can't. It's regular
experience. But it has 2 gyro stabilized guns in its weapons section,
which makes no sense. Yeah.
So that's just my proofreader.
Yeah. But as always, you can take the Stewart, you can take the Chaffee, you can take the Lee, and you can take Shermans in all shapes and colors.
Yep.
And then of course there's a Pershing and the Alligator. I don't know why anyone would take these. The Pershing at least. The Alligator, maybe it's got better.
I was looking at it. I think for 140 points, it's regular. It's with a flamethrower in it. It's not a bad choice. I could see it. I could see if you're doubling down on tanks, and you're going to take 4 tanks anyway. Tank platoon. I could definitely see it.
Yeah.
I think there's that multiple threat issue where if you have 3 other tanks, this one can kind of troll in behind them and make infantry reluctant to come up on them.
Yeah. But of these choices, are there any that you would actually field? Do you think?
Yeah, I think the Stewart still has. People obviously are frustrated with the half-shot machine guns. I think that's a good change. I still think with the reduced penalties to shooting, it's still a very deadly, very lethal tank for the points. I think it. Again, I think that one's going to be. I think we're still going to see it.
Okay.
On the table. I like the Chaffee. I know Gordon over in the UK likes the Chaffee as well. That turret mount being, and again, I always like taking the tank that can kill the meta tank.
Yeah, and exactly. And so, the Chaffee was always that, right?
Yeah.
As was the Lee, by the way, but with the 2 anti-tank guns. Yeah, I think that there might be something in having a Lee now that just sits and goes on ambush, because you're then shooting with the improved anti-tank guns. But it is expensive still. 255. That's expensive for a tank, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, you can try to knock down it by 25 points for taking some vulnerabilities, but I do like the Lee with having the 2 guns.
Me as well. The Shermans, I think we're going to see less Shermans now, just because that
we didn't see that many.
Sherman, the 105 was the most common one, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and with the new ranges for indirect fire, I'm not seeing that as much, I think. Then let's move on and talk about what we really want to talk about: the tank destroyers. Are you going to field that Hellcat now?
Well, I've already written one list that has 2 of them in it.
So yeah, definitely.
If I take a tank, it's probably going to be the Hellcat.
Yeah.
It's
Are you
too
going to
pretty of a tank.
Are you going to give it an HMG on top?
No, I still think if I can be convinced. I'm still open to the discussion, but if I'm taking HMGs, they're going to be on the half tracks.
Okay. Yeah.
I I think there's an argument for it, but again, it's a lot of extra points on a vehicle that's already open topped and vulnerable.
Yeah. And it's mostly there to kill that tank, not pin it, right?
Yep, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
I think if I take them, uh, I was even getting to the place where I wasn't even paying for recce on it in version 2. And
Yeah.
just a stripped down, basic, cheap Hellcat with the and again, recce now with a tank that you want back and shooting, and now being able to drive yourself off the board edge.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure recce is going to be
It's
as
going
much
to
of a
need some
benefit.
tactical considerations.
Yes.
Maybe not take it, but if you do take it, at least be very aware of how you're placing that tank, right? Because that might lose you the tank.
Yeah. And it's still just too expensive to take the veteran for the plus one, because there'd be an argument if you're taking the veteran to really try to push it up the field and get into that point blank area and just punch holes and stuff. But my luck, you can always still roll the 1 to pin, even at point blank.
What about armored cars? Armored cars were always a problem for Americans before, right?
Yeah.
Have they improved for you?
I'm not. There's nothing really in the armored car section. Do we want to do any of the self-propelled artillery?
Yeah. Well, we just skip those because.
Yeah.
I'm not going to see a lot of priests. I don't think.
No, I don't think so. Armored cars. Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to be feeling anything that's soft skinned. The Jeep. I love the Jeep.
Yeah.
The Jeep medium machine gun. I use that. That was pretty much a staple in every one of my lists.
Every single my list had at least a Jeep or a motorcycle, right?
And not only was the Jeep with machine gun a staple in my list, I was envious of the SAS Jeeps that the British got that did the same thing better and cheaper.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know that I would even take a British one at this point.
No.
I just full stop. I think soft skins are done for me, with possibly one exception that we'll get to here in a second.
Right. So that leaves us with the transport white scout car and the half tracks. Are these going to be a thing? Because now you don't like if you're cutting out all the soft skins, that means retiring all your Dodges, and I know you have a lot of those.
I have a stack. I have a full motor pool of them.
Yeah.
I do like the what is the M2 one? Just from an aesthetic perspective, I've always liked the idea of if I were going to play Germans, the running the Hanamags up the field. They're so cool. They're such a iconic 2V. When I played 40K back in the day, I ran Armored Fist, Mechanized Imperial Guard. Like that was my jam.
Yeah.
Running tanks up the field and dumping infantry out of them. I loved it.
I did the same with Eldars.
Yep. It was just, and I feel like there's an opportunity to do that now.
There is.
Maybe it's a forced opportunity because I can't do the thing that I was doing anymore.
It means that
this is me finding the silver.
Right. It means that you're changing the way that we're thinking about what Americans can and should do is changing.
Yep. And the half tracks, the M2s are already finding a way into my list. I don't know. The White Scout car on the face of it looks pretty much the same, except it's just 2 points cheaper and has 2 less seats.
Yeah.
So I'll spend the extra 2 points to get the versatility to throw an extra 2-man team in my truck. I like the ability to drive through terrain. I like that you're now armored. It's great. So
yeah. For me as well, I think that there's something there in those armored half tracks, and you can put all kinds of weapons on them. You can put HMGs, or you can put like there's even like 3 additional pintle-mounted MMGs. So that's a lot of Daka you could put on those. And then one of the things that I was looking for here. Yeah.
I'm not sure that I will, though. I think you start driving up the price, and it's still a 7 armored open-topped vehicle. So
it is. So it's going to get pinned anyway. Yeah.
I think where the money making on that is going to be when you drive up to offload whatever's in it, putting that point blank HMG into a squad to throw a couple extra pins on, and then the rest of your guys doing their work.
Yeah. For me, when I was looking through this, one of the first things I looked up in the American list was the LBT4, the Water Buffalo.
As you would.
As I would. And you know what? They changed it. So now the American one can take 30 guys, but the British one can only take 24 guys. What? What's with that? What's with that, Warlord Games? I have no idea.
I can't tell you.
No.
They want to sell ones with green paint jobs, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And you can upgrade 2 pintle-mounted MMGs now to 2 pintle-mounted HMGs for 20 points. That might be worth it, because you can split fire those. That's 2 HMGs firing in different directions here. So that's an interesting addition for me.
And for 10 points, you can throw another MMG on it.
As well. Mounted. So that's 3 ways you can split fire. Yeah.
Yep. And 100 points. So would that be about 130 points for 2 HMGs and an MMG?
Yep.
Plus transport capacity. It's not soft skinned. You can put a bunch of dudes in it.
You can put more than half your army in that transport and just.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we'll see some of those on the field.
I think so too. Like I already, because I used my British one, right? I think a lot of people copied me. So we saw British LBTs, but I think we're going to see American LBTs now.
Yep.
They got good. Right. So that was the units.
Well, I will say the one last thing here while we're in the trucks. I think the one exception to soft skins that I'm seeing so far is the Dodge 3/4 ton. You can still, because I ran them as regular with medium machine guns in version 2. If I were going to run them now, I would take them as inexperienced. I would take them with no gun. I would simply keep them behind terrain, behind your tanks, behind whatever, out of sight, and just use it for that one run to get up behind a building so that next turn your guys can get out. Just that.
Yeah.
Extra. It's 18 points for an extra order dice, and it gives you some maneuverability. If you're wanting to run flamethrowers on outflank or something like that, you can still drive in and offload.
Yeah.
So I still think that's maybe the one, and then just get them out of there. But that might still be the one exception for soft skins for me.
Right.
I'll have to see.
We shall see. I personally, I believe that armored transports will be it from now on, but we shall see. Right, let's talk about what we are expecting in, like, all through version 2. I had this idea that we had these types of army builds, right? So what do you think we're going to see with Americans, and what do I think we're going to see with Americans? Where are they going to go? How are people going to use the new force organization chart to build armies, do you think?
I think where Americans were strong in V2, and I think it's going to stay the same, and maybe even more importantly, is I always felt they were strong in the just infantry boots on the ground game.
Yeah.
and infantry got more survivable. I think looking at the missions are going to be more important. I think being able to, and just having a lot of different choices on what kind of infantry you can take. I think most of my lists I've been writing so far are very heavy infantry based, kind of staying away from the tanks, staying away from the armored cars. That's kind of what I see, a much more foot based skirmishing army backed up with those flamethrowers and armored half tracks, whatever, to punch through terrain and deliver.
To deliver a counterpunch, anyways, if anything comes too close. I'm also thinking that we may see American armies that are completely without any vehicles, any armor. Because with a heavy weapons platoon, you can take so much anti-tank, so many bazookas, that the enemy will get locked down very, very easily, right?
Every list I've written so far has at least 3 bazookas in it.
That's it, yeah.
And those can hold off armor long enough for your flamethrowers to get up in place, and then
or your veterans to be on the objectives, or what, like, your army has done what you need to do. As soon as the enemy has gotten rid of those bazookas, then you're already where you need to be, right?
Right. And this is more in the meta thinking. It has less to do with necessarily army building, but like I'll be interested to see how the tables change in versions. Like I've already heard talking like we need more terrain. They're going to have to be more dense boards. With
that's where I am at least.
With the upgrade to anti-tank guns and stuff, being able to lock down the boards with the +1 to hit and everything. I think tables are going to change, which means army composition is going to change as well. And I think that is going to significantly benefit American armies that do well in that close range shooting, do well with the closer you get, the more important infantry are and the more vulnerable tanks are. And I think that's only going to benefit the American player.
Yeah. I will throw in here at the end that I think we're going to see higher order dice counts for Americans. I think we're going to see that in general, but I think Americans are going to, because I think the American meta is going to shift towards infantry so much. I think it's going to be cheaper for Americans. They're going to have access to a lot of teams, like mortars and bazookas and what have you. And we talk about MMG teams or HMG teams, right? And I think it's all going to be cheaper, which means that I think the order dice count for Americans is going to go higher than average from now on.
The lists I've been writing so far have all kind of hovered in the 20 to 25 order dice range for the Americans.
Yeah. And that's at 1250, right?
1250, yep.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm pretty much just accepting that 1250 is the new point range that we're going to be writing standard lists at.
I'm because I'm prepping so much for World Open War, I'm at 1100 all the time mentally. I'm at 1100, right?
Yeah.
So at some point 1250 is going to be a lot more on the drawing board for me. But yeah.
I'm excited. I've thematically always liked the idea of I started my bolt action career with 101st Airborne Infantry, and I like the idea of a whole bunch of guys on foot trying to have to figure out what to do with these German tanks. That just narratively in my mind, I've always liked that, and I think version 3 is going to play into that. Yeah. So that makes me happy.
So thematically you're happy, and I think you're going to be okay-ish at least. I don't think Americans are in a bad position, even though they have been nerfed a little bit.
And I think everyone, the S tier British lists have been nerfed the most.
Yeah.
And by them being nerfed the most, the Americans have gotten better.
And it's opened up the meta for everyone else as well. Yeah. So
I like the idea of not having to play against an extra 200 points worth of stuff.
All the free stuff you could get, the Indian Gurkhas, Dhaka Steward, Right. Anyhow, Ryan, thank you so much for tuning in and chatting with me. It's been absolutely lovely. It's nice to hear your thoughts on competitive Americans and what's going to happen.
It was my pleasure.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. That's it from me and Ryan, and we will see you another time. Cheers.
Take care.